What up, Hope Biscuits? It's your girl Skitten, back at it again. Whew. I am just coming down off of the high that was my wedding. Yes, your girl is a wife now. I have a husband. Yes, I do. In case you were wondering, yes, the husband is Czechoslovakia. I didn't just up and marry some random person. And so now we are back, and honestly, all I want to do is lay around with my husband all day. But I guess you guys need like content to watch or whatever. So we are here to watch Miscellaneous Myths Herakles by Overly Sarcastic Productions. Y'all have been begging me to watch like all of Red's content, and honestly I really like a lot of Blue's content too, so be prepared. Be prepared. Be prepared for a lot of Overly Sarcastic Productions. Because I don't know, I just kind of feel like we're kindred spirits. Like, I want to know a lot about everything, they know a lot about everything. We're just like three peas in a pod. So let's go ahead and get started with the Myth of Herakles, because unfortunately, even though I just watched Hercules like a couple weeks ago, Hercules' story, unlike it was portrayed in the Disney film, was not all sunshine and rainbows, guys. Hercules had a hard life, okay? You guys don't even know. Oh God, I couldn't take that off. You guys don't even know the half of what he went through. So we're gonna find out. Let's go ahead and get started. Ooh.
What's the point of me doing this one? Everyone already knows Hercules. He's basically ancient Greek Superman with a healthy dose of modern sports stardom, right? Did 12 cool things, got the girl, called it a day. Couldn't be simpler.
Well, no. Hercules is a lot of things, but simple is not one of them. First of all, Hercules is the Roman hero. Heracles is the original Greek version, named for the glory of Hera and an ineffectual attempt to keep her from trying to murder him. Unsurprisingly, they are pretty distinct. Second of all, remember this word?
I've talked about how hubris was the most common character flaw for Greek heroes. They'd
Think too highly of themselves, try to be gods, and end up getting smacked down for their sins.
So far, we've only seen one major subversion of this, which was Perseus, who basically didn't have any flaws. But Heracles is also a subversion because his biggest flaw is wrath.
How unexpectedly modern, right? Well, Heracles begins his life, as so many heroes do, with Zeus spotting a fine-looking lady, this one by the name of Alcmene.
Zeus does his thing and shapeshifts into her husband, Amphitryon, and gets her pregnant.
The very same night, her actual husband scoots on by and does the same thing.
That's right, today's first plot twist is that Heracles had a twin. So Hera is livid, as she always is when Zeus pulls this kind of nonsense, but this time she's extra miffed and starts trying to take as many petty revenges on the babies she can possibly. This kind of nonsense. But this time she's that Heracles had a twin. So Hera is livid, as she always.
It's cool she didn't know it was me. That makes it less okay.
Is when Zeus pulls this kind of nonsense. But this time she's extra miffed and starts trying to take as many petty revenges on the babies she can possibly think of.
Priority 1 is screwing Heracles out of his birthright. So the night Heracles and his twin are slated to be born, Hera convinces Zeus to make the next descendant of Perseus to be born the king. Now Alcmene is one of Perseus' descendants, meaning Heracles is slated to be the next descendant of Perseus. So Zeus is totally okay with the idea, whereupon Hera zips down and kidnaps Alethea, the goddess of childbirth, to keep Heracles and his brother right where they are until the day is done. Then she causes Heracles' cousin Eurystheus to be born prematurely, so he gets to be the king instead. Fortunately, Alcmene gets to give birth eventually because one of her servants tricks Alethea into bailing, whereupon Hera turns the servant into a weasel as revenge.
The family still keeps her around though, which is nice.
Anyway, Alcmene is acutely aware of the fact that the baby is already a problem for her and will probably only cause more problems later on, so she kicks him out, whereupon Athena scoops him up and ferries him over to Hera, telling her that someone left this poor baby just lying around, whereupon Hera pities the little guy and nurses him a bit. Unfortunately, Heracles is a toothy baby and boob noms a little too hard. Hera chucks him because ow, but the damage is done because her magic milk has given him superpowers, making him crazy strong. Athena takes the little guy back to his parents and they raise him pretty uneventfully, except for that one time with the snakes. So prior to the 12 tasks thing, Heracles' story is a little muddled, which is pretty common for culture heroes. They tend to accumulate stories over time. The main highlight is one time teenage Heracles gets pissy because he's having trouble learning to play the lyre and ends up killing his teacher as a result.
Excuse me? I don't think that's what's supposed to happen. God, Jesus, thank goodness I wasn't born with superhuman strength, because learning trig would have been rough. I was homeschooled. I just wouldn't have a dad anymore, I guess.
Then a while later, he ends up in Thebes, where he courts and marries Megara, the daughter of King Creon. They have 2 beautiful children, whereupon Hera drives Heracles crazy and he kills all 3 of them. He gets his brain back, is immediately stricken with grief, and goes to consult the oracle about what he should do to atone. The oracle, guided by Hera, tells him he needs to atone for his crimes by serving his cousin, King Eurystheus.
I feel like this is wrong and she should be stripped of her oracle duties, because how can you be the oracle but misguiding people because you're guided by somebody else? Aren't you only supposed to be guided by the fates? What the fuck is this bullshit?
For 10 years and doing whatever he tells him to. This is all part of her cunning plan to accidentally make Heracles the most famous and revered Greek hero ever, because nobody ever just kills anybody in these stories. So this leads to the famous 12 labors, or rather 10 plus a couple extra. Initially, Eurystheus gives him 10 labors, but 2 of them get discounted for shenanigans. Number 1 is to kill the Nemean lion, known for being immune to all mortal weapons
and having the general disposition of a chainsaw strapped to a ceiling fan.
Heracles ends up strangling it and skinning it with one of its own claws.
Mission
Nice.
number 2 is killing the Lernaean Hydra, for which Heracles conscripts his half-nephew and sometimes lover, Iolaus, for moral support.
That happened a lot
His who? His what? Never mind.
in ancient Greece, don't question it.
Anyway, after learning that cutting off the heads just causes more heads to grow back, Iolaus suggests using fire to burn the neck stumps, which works really well. Before they leave, Heracles takes some poisonous Hydra blood and coats his arrows with it.
Because why not, right? With that out of the way, Heracles returns home, but Eurystheus is all, hey, you got help for that one, dude, doesn't count, and adds another trial for later. So
Booty.
trial number 3 is to capture, alive this time, the Ceryneian hind, a deer sacred to Artemis. Eurystheus' cunning plan here is to have Heracles offend Artemis and get her to kill him, but as soon as Heracles explains what's up with his trials and such, Artemis is like, yeah, dude, go for it, just bring her back when you're done. So Heracles brings the hind to Eurystheus, but Eurystheus is too slow to actually catch it, and it zorps back to Artemis no problem. Mission accomplished. Mission 4 is to capture the Arithmanian boar, but Heracles gets distracted along the way and parties it up with a centaur friend for a while instead. Unfortunately, centaurs apparently don't know that Greek wine needs to be watered down before it's drinkable, so they all get super drunk and then start trying to pick fights. Heracles drives him off with his poisoned arrows, but his centaur buddy accidentally drops one on his foot and dies. Well, that was kind of pointless. Anyway, after that fiasco, Heracles visits the immortal centaur Chiron for advice, who tells him that the boar is impossible to stop while charging, so he needs to drive him into the snow to immobilize him and then carry him off. So Heracles does, and brings the boar back to Eurystheus, who immediately freaks out and makes him release it back into the wild. Mission number 5 is to clean the stables of King Augeas, which are filthy. So Heracles first gets the guy to promise him 10% of his prize cattle if he manages to pull it off, then diverts 2 rivers through the stables and cleans them out super efficiently, surprisingly not demolishing the building in the process. But Augeas is a sore loser and refuses to pay up, so Heracles and Augeas' son Phileus take him to court, whereupon he sidesteps all that legal nonsense by banishing them both, because he is the king. And then Eurystheus refuses to credit the trial because Heracles did it for pay, even though he didn't get paid. Heracles gets pretty pissed and kicks Augeas out of the kingdom and makes his son Phileus the king, then takes his cows and goes home. Mission number 6 is to drive out the Stymphalian birds from the swamp they live in, which he does with a little divine help.
Now this is one that I haven't really heard a lot about, so I want to see how she does this.
Has Hephaestus make him a special rattle to frighten the birds into the air, whereupon Heracles is free to shoot them down. Trial 7 is to capture the Cretan bull, mostly known for being the father of the Minotaur.
Pretty.
So Heracles wanders into Crete and asks Minos if he can take the bull, which Minos is fine with since that stupid bull has done nothing but wreck stuff ever since it got there. So Heracles picks him up and brings him back, whereupon the bull breaks loose and wanders around Marathon for a while before dropping out of the story completely. Trial 8 involves capturing the mares of Diomedes, which is complicated by the fact that the mares mostly eat people and they're very hard to control. Heracles ends up isolating them on an island he dug out for just that purpose, then kills Diomedes and feeds him to the horses to calm them down. This chills them out enough that it's easy for him to bring them back. Trial number 9 is to retrieve the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. Fortunately, Heracles being Heracles, this isn't too hard, as Hippolyta takes one look at him and quite willingly drops her clothes.
All he had to do was be like, and she was just like, take it from me now. Maybe it wasn't quite that easy. I don't know. She's going past these so fast.
Besides, this was too easy, and spreads a rumor among the Amazons that Heracles intends to kidnap their queen. They dogpile on him, and in the chaos, Heracles kills Hippolyta for some reason and bails with the girdle. Mission 10 is to steal the cattle of Geryon. Unfortunately, he lives on the other side of a stupid hot desert, and Heracles gets so grumpy and overheated that he fires an arrow at the sun. Fortunately, Helios finds this charming rather than intimidating, and loans Heracles his sun chariot to get him there faster. So Heracles touches down on Erythia, whereupon he's attacked by Orthus, the 2-headed dog, who he kills. Then Erythia, the cattle herd, hears the commotion and comes by to help, and gets killed too. Finally, Geryon comes out in full battle armor and is, you guessed it, killed. So Heracles scoots back with the cattle after taking...
So Heracles is basically One Punch Man? Question mark? Crossover? Opportunity for some fan fiction?
an extra year to round them all up because Hera thought it'd be funny to send a gadfly to spook him. Eurystheus then sacrifices the cattle to Hera, which does nothing to soothe her nerves. Trial number 11 is to retrieve apples from the garden of the Hesperides, which is complicated somewhat by the fact that the location of the garden is a secret. So Heracles wrestles the location out of Nereus, the old man of the sea, and heads off. On the way, he runs into this dude Antaeus, who's immortal, but only so long as he's touching the earth. He challenges Heracles to a wrestling match, and when Heracles realizes he can't beat him by pinning him, he just picks him up and crushes him. Anyway, so Heracles reaches the garden of the Hesperides, but he can't get the apples apples because the tree is guarded by this big dragony thing named Ladon. Fortunately, nearby is the Titan Atlas, busily holding up a sky. So Heracles is like, hey buddy, hey! Yeah, want to do me a solid and grab me some apples? And Atlas is like, sure dude, but you'll need to carry this. Sky ain't gonna hold itself up, you know? So Heracles tags in and holds up the sky while Atlas scoots over to the tree and picks some apples. So Heracles is like, yo, thanks man. Hey, can you tag back in? And Atlas is like, you know, actually, how about you just tell me where to take these and I deliver your apples for you? So Heracles is like, oh man, that just sounds great, but you know, my cape's getting really uncomfortable. Could you like tag in for a second so I can adjust it and then we'll swap back out? And Atlas is like, what could go wrong? And takes back the sky, at which point Heracles obviously bails. For his 12th and final labor, Eurystheus straight up tells Heracles to go to hell and kidnap Cerberus. So Heracles traipses down to Hades, whereupon he bumps into Theseus and Pirithous, still fused to their chairs. They ask him for help, so Heracles frees Theseus, but when he tries for Pirithous, there's a huge earthquake, which he takes as a sign that he should probably leave him there. So Heracles heads deeper into the underworld and encounters Cerberus, along with Hades, who asks him what exactly he thinks he's doing. So Heracles tells him he's here to kidnap his dog, and Hades tells him okay, but he can't use any weapons to do it, which Heracles is fine with because, again, wrestling. So he bear hugs one of Cerberus's heads until he gives in, and I guess Hades objects or something because most tellings of the story involve Heracles shooting him for some reason. So Heracles drags Cerberus out to Eurystheus, who is unsurprisingly so terrified that he demands Heracles return him immediately. So Heracles carries Cerberus back to Hades and goes on his merry way, finally free of his service to Eurystheus. Now Heracles' story doesn't end with his labors. He has all kind of hijinks, frankly too many to list here. A lot of those hijinks were romantic. He was married 4 times, his third wife being the one to kill him. And
Ho. She a hoe.
one noteworthy thing is that Heracles, as a symbol of pure masculinity for Greece, had a lot of dude lovers too, because what's manlier than 2 men? Apparently in Plutarch's time, it was customary for male couples to worship at the tomb of Iolaus, who was widely considered to be Heracles' primary boyfriend, which is kinda sweet. But anyway, I kinda glossed over the fact that he dies somewhere along the line, so let's talk about that. Heracles is on marriage number 3, and his wife is this lady Deianira. For those of you who know Greek, her name is a spoiler, as it translates to husband destroyer. So one day, this centaur Nessus decides to kidnap her, which Heracles obviously objects to. He shoots the centaur with one of his old Hydra blood arrows, and the poison centaur tells Deianira that his blood can totally make a potion to keep her husband faithful should she ever need such a thing. He persuades her to bottle some of his blood and then dies. This becomes relevant several years later, when Heracles falls in love with this other lady, Iole. Deianira remembers the love potion thing, takes some of the blood, and smears it on the inside of one of Heracles' tunics, whereupon, because it's full of Hydra venom and very, very poisonous, the blood melts into Heracles' body and seriously f***s him up. He's too tough for it to kill him, but it really hurts, so he kinda decides to die anyway. Heracles throws himself into a funeral pyre and burns away his mortal half, becoming a pure god and ascending to Olympus in the process, whereupon he marries Hebe, the goddess of youth. Philoctetes, the guy who lit the pyre, gets gifted Heracles' poison arrows and later uses them to kill Paris in the Trojan War, so I guess some good came of all this. Hercules, hero of song.
One of Heracles' adventures I did discuss here is the Gigantomachy, a battle between the Olympians and the giants. Apparently, there was a prophecy that the giants couldn't be killed by the gods alone, and they needed the help of a mortal, and Heracles technically qualified. I just want to know, okay, so his wife killed him, but what happened to her after she killed him? Did she get cursed? Did she go to hell? Was everything fine? Hercules up and left her ass and married a goddess, but then what happened to her? We never find out these things. The Romans always leave us hanging. Or Greeks. The Greeks always, whatever. We're always left hanging.
Long and story, Hercules.
The descriptions of the gods fighting is pretty crazy too. Poseidon throws an island at a guy. Athena tears off this one guy's skin.
Winner of ancient
Dionysus
glory.
smacks a dude with his ivy staff. Hermes borrows Hades' helm of invisibility. Even the Fates get in on the action and club a couple giants.
Fighting with.
So that is the story of Heracles as told by Overly Sarcastic Productions. And peace out, Ho Biscuits. It's Skitten Lit.